it is a complicated place where we are now, where we're like, why would we want to continue being part of a system that has really dealt with us in a racist, classist, demeaning manner, that has gaslit us for so long, because we worked so hard. We worked so hard to try to get options, chances, come up with different like ideas, and then realize that none of it would have made a difference unless, it was something that they already had planned for. So we are going to rebrand ourselves. But to, honestly, individually speaking, I feel free. I feel liberated. Collegiate as a system talks about reparations. I don't know how what they've done is in keeping with reparations, but that is a history that we're not encumbered with, right? We're not carrying that history. Our history really is a history of love for our neighborhood and for our neighbor.
Welcome to Uptown Voices. From Harlem to the Heights to the northern tip of Inwood, we're here to celebrate our people and together seek solutions for the difficult issues we're all confronting as neighbors. Regardless of what hood you represent, we share the same goal, creating the best community we can, somewhere to enjoy, where we can build our lives and raise our children. We want to thank 181 Cabrini, located on the corner of 181st Street and Cabrini Boulevard, for its generous support for this podcast. It's your neighborhood bistro just steps away from the North Walk of the GWB. Stay tuned for a discount code that you can mention to your bartender or server the next time you visit the restaurant. We also need financial contributions from listeners like you to produce, improve, and expand our content. To contribute, please scan the QR code on the screen or visit www.livingamericana.com. That's living without a G. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Octavio Blanco and Led Black with Uptown Voices. It's great to have you here today for a special episode. Today we are speaking with Johanna Garcia. She's a community activist uptown, and she's a part of the Save Fort Washington Collegiate Church Coalition, a group of individuals and organizations that have come together to do what they can to save the Fort Washington Collegiate Church, which recently we were all shocked by the news that the church is going to be shut down. And so, as we all know, this church is central to our community. It's not only centrally located at 181st Street and Fort Washington Avenue, it also is a congregation that is welcoming to a lot of the members of our community. It's a progressive place with many people and many organizations using it as a base for their own organization. So Johanna Garcia is here. Johanna, why don't we start off? Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, Uptown Voices audience, and also then let us know what is your role and what are you doing in order to save the church?
First of all, thank you to both you and Len for having me here, and also to recognizing what an important issue this is for our community, and it represents more than just that block on 181st Street in Fort Washington. As you said, I'm Johanna Garcia. I am a native. I'm born and raised of Washington Heights, real proud Washington Heights girl. And Fort Washington Collegiate Church is a church of which I've been a member of since, I would say, about 10 years or a little bit more now. And what's been going on is that due to terrible fiscal decisions that the larger umbrella, which is collegiate, the Collegiate Church made some years ago, right before the pandemic, the poorest, most working class ministry in their system is paying the price. They set up barriers, they set up unrealistic benchmarks, and they decided on April 7th that they will close this ministry. And Fort Washington is part of an interfaith campus. We're there with a synagogue, but we're there with other organizations that provide services. We have I should say, community garden. We supported the fridge, which we know is really needed in these times of food insecurity. So what we've done, the way that we've responded, is like anything else that Washington Heights natives respond to. And I told the board, this is a neighborhood church. You don't understand Washington Heights. We're not going to sit down there. Even if I wasn't part of this equation, the community will rise up against this because of what this means in terms of not having services and also what it represents when it comes, as you mentioned, to progressive inclusion and really embracing what we're supposed to be about. And this is the worst time for something like this to happen when you have the right on the political stage hijacking what it means to lead a spiritual life, what it means to live by scripture, what it means, if we're going to get really into it, to live God's values. They have hijacked it to say that it means to actually exclude people, to make women feel like they don't have rights, to make people feel like they don't have a right to love who they want to love, to make people feel like, if you're from the other side of the border, you don't belong here. And here we are on 181st and Fort Washington, a testament that that is not our values and that we embrace everyone and that love period is our mantra. So what we're doing and what we've done is rallies and raise awareness that this is happening. June 30th came and went, and June 30th was the day that we were evicted. Collegiate doesn't like that I use that word, but that's what it is. We were evicted. And what's really weird about it is that as a ministry, we were evicted, but they continue to be there. And when I say they, their operations, their headquarters has moved from the Upper West Side to there. Like they're there now, and they're going to be there at least until November because they could not legally displace yet the synagogue that is there. So legally, they have to be there at least until November. So you would think, okay, let's use this time then to negotiate a situation where we can keep that ministry for Washington there. But they're like, no, done. And it raises a lot of questions about, did they ever want to save Fort Washington Collegiate in the first place? We're still having conversations with them. There is a letter from the electeds that they're going to receive. The Save Fort Washington Coalition has asked to have a meeting with them. But here's the head scratcher. So the congregation that they thought was going to just disappear. And this is a testament. I tell you, if you're not from Washington Heights, you don't know what it is to be like. There's nothing like being a person from the Washington Heights, because they thought that these individuals are just going to go to the other ministries, right? Which they have on the Upper West Side, on Fifth Avenue in Madison, one down in the Village. And I kept saying, that's not us. We're not going to get up on a Sunday. That's not going to happen. So what occurred is that as a congregation, we became more united and we said the church is not brick and mortar. The church is the people. That is where our values are. That is where our spiritual journey are. So the head scratcher is that just up the block at Mother Cabrini Shrine, they're going to take us in. We're going to we are kind of like a Phoenix, like we are rebranding ourselves as Fort Washington Community Church. We're shedding the word collegiate because collegiate has a lot to atone for in its 100 years. But we are Fort Washington Community Church. We're going to have our first service on July 20th out of Mother Cabrini. And it makes you wonder, how can we make it there? And we're not even welcomed in our own collegiate system.
There is just, so much. You said a head scratcher. I mean, this whole situation for me has been, number one, I mean, I'm not part of the church. I'm not even a religious person, but I do believe that people should have a space to express themselves and to express their religious beliefs and to have their churches. But for me, the head scratcher is, didn't this church just recently renovate? Wasn't it didn't it invest tons and millions of dollars to renovate itself and to be, I mean, to me, as an outside observer, I was so happy about that church because number one, it did seem so inclusive, and it was. And number two, I would go vote there. I went to go to listen to my friends in the choir sing at there's a Washington Heights choir, and they use the community choir. And so I loved it. I went into the church sanctuary to listen to the choir, and it was beautiful. So to me, the whole head scratcher is how was it that from one day to another, one day they were investing millions of dollars to renovate the church, and then to another day, they're all of a sudden shutting it down. I've been researching a little bit about this issue, which there isn't much written about, unfortunately. I wish that there had been more coverage, but the the Manhattan Times did do a number of stories on it. And one of the stories, it seemed to indicate that the plan was like 2 years in the making to shut down the church. It seemed like it surprised everybody. Was that so? Can you get into that? Like, what was the issue that came up, I guess, 2 years ago, or maybe just recently, that was the final death knell of the church?
Yeah, there's a lot in terms of what's occurred fiscally that people don't understand. So I want to start with the funding model for collegiate. In the beginning was that the collegiate would financially support the foreign ministry. In Fort Washington Collegiate Church is a ministry that was intended to support a working class, understanding that the parishioners that come to that church were never going to have the deep pockets to self-sustain the church. And so Collegiate said, we have this funding model, and this is part of what we want to do. And if you go way, 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 way back, I'm talking like early, before Fort Washington was even situated there, that church, Collegiate had another church, I'd say in Harlem, when certain population started coming in, you had a group that said, this has become a little too diverse for me. And so then you had the more European affluent members go to the Southern ministry, and you had the parishioners who were of color come up to Fort Washington. So Fort Washington Collegiate Church historically has been that hub that has accepted and embraced more of the working class and marginalized communities in New York, period, in New York City, in terms of the collegiate system. So when the neighborhood saw that capital investment in the building, it was because it was still under the funding model that we understand for Washington Collegiate Church's mission is to serve the community. It is not there to get deep pocket parishioners so that when it's time to do the collection during service, you have that's not who we were. That's not how we were designed. But what occurred is that I think 2019, I be getting my actual year wrong, Marble, which is the ministry on Fifth Avenue, entered into a real estate deal with another individual who actually has had legal problems since and invested millions. So when Marble invested, it was investing millions from the collegiate, all of what's supposed to be for all four ministries. And what occurred is that deal went south, and collegiate failed to protect its most vulnerable ministry. So what it did is like, well, we're going to have to cut our losses. Goodbye, Fort Washington. And someone at Fort Washington said, wait, hold on. Don't cut us out yet, even though it's not our fault. Give us a chance to see if we can sustain ourselves. So that is where that 2-year period came. But it's been very difficult when collegiate has told us, you need $1 million partner to stay. And we're like, $1 million in Washington Heights? We're not down, this isn't 14th Street, this isn't Upper West Side, this isn't Midtown. Those are not the kind of, we don't have not-for-profits that are looking for space with that kind of operating discretionary money. That just doesn't exist. And so it did become very challenging. But a year and a half ago, we were able to hodgepodge something together, which is the Fort Tryon Jewish Center, which is the synagogue that's there until November, and the Y that's currently on Maple Avenue. The Y said, we want to be in that space. So together with, other income resources, streams, we were able to say, okay, we can make this work. What occurred a year and a half ago is that let's do like an interim lease, like 2 years. And then at the end of that 2-year period, we will sign like either a 40-year or longer lease around last September, which, by the way, when in that situation, we were completely stable. Around September, the Y decided not to renew. I think what has not been covered here is asking the why they decided not to renew. And I suspect that if you were to follow up with them, they would tell you that they met with the same difficulty that we faced as Collegiate's own ministry with the leadership of Collegiate. That it just became very difficult, and it almost seemed like they didn't want this to work out. So then the Y said, we cannot make this work. And as a member of the board, we should have been more involved in those discussions, in those negotiations. And that's the other disparity. Every ministry in the system has a board. And every board had more autonomy and more say in the negotiations and the direction of their own church. We did not. We were sidelined, we were an afterthought. And so I cannot tell you as a board member, as an elder of that church, what happened in conversations with the Y, that the Y decided we can't do this anymore.
So let me ask you a question, Johanna. What are the plans then? Are they trying to sell it? Are they, is you know what I mean? Like, this seems super underhanded. So what do you know? What the vision is here?
They made sure to take a vote to take us out of the full board, so we wouldn't hear what those plans are. But what's interesting, really interesting about that question is that out of the 4 ministries, the other 3 are landmarked, so they can't do much with that property. Ours is not landmarked, and we own our air rights, which makes that piece of land very, very lucrative. And because of that deal that they made in 2019 with Marble, they went, I believe, from maybe $40 million in terms of endowment to like single digits. So this piece right now is going to be looked at as a revenue generator to make the other ministries whole, which
Right, but this
already
is a
are
church,
wealthier.
right? Right, but
We're
this
a
is a church
church.
also, right? Right, for a church, it's like, let's get that money, right? Like, that seems like what's at play. So I mean, I think we need to make a big deal about this, and so are you guys are no longer affiliated? Then is that a complete break or what?
So I want to be careful not to get ahead of ourselves and say it's a complete break. It's a really complicated relationship right now. They took the vote to completely abolish Fort Washington Collegiate Church from all of their bylaws. Like, it doesn't exist post June 30th, which is, I mean, the way they move, it's really redefined for me the idea of someone that says they are Christian. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. It's not everybody, but uh, it's why we want to keep some kind of conversations with them open, a dialogue about, listen, okay, we're not going to be part of collegiate anymore, but as stewards of the spiritual journey, why can't we rent that space just like we're renting space from Cabrini? Why can't we?
Yeah, why can't you?
For more than that, we
Are
want
they
to.
are they answering you as to why you can't?
Not yet. That's a conversation to be had next week, I believe. But more than anything, even if we're not in that building, because as I kept telling them, we are a community and the community stands up for the community in Washington Heights. We are not just going to stand idly by whether or not we're in that building and just let them do with that space, that building, whatever they want, because it's our neighborhood. And the person that's making many of these decisions isn't from this neighborhood. He actually is from Texas. So it's like the sense of like what the impact on our neighborhood is truly not felt. And everybody else that isn't from Texas is either from, further south in terms of the more affluent parts of.
And that church has been there my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, it's been there forever. So are they trying to build something else? Is that what they're trying to do? Are they trying to sell it? We don't have no clue.
They won't tell us. They're very general and say we will make sure that it's good for the community. But that's the same as Led someone saying, "Hey, this is affordable," and we go like, "Affordable to who? Like, who are you talking
Right.
about?" So when they say we're going to make sure it's a public good, they have yet to. They've proven that they're not walking in good faith.
So what real quick? I'm sorry. So what?
Yeah.
Tell people. Let's say really clearly. What can people do? Like, how can people get involved? What can people call? Who can they email? Like, what can they do right now?
I think putting pressure on the elected officials to be vigilant of what goes into that space and make sure that it isn't a deal that privatizes or makes a commodity of that space when it should be for the community. It's historically been for the community. Like you said, that church has been there all your life. I've heard stories from people that have been there even before I was a member, where in the times of when the Bronx was burning, and people say the Bronx was burning, but we are a neighborhood that's very adjacent and very impacted by what happens in the Bronx and vice versa. That's always been the case. And that there were many, many, many young people who needed a place to be and to go and be safe. And that is where parents were like, eyes closed, I'm leaving my kids here because I know they're safe. It was a refuge for them. It was a refuge for migrants and immigrants historically. And we cannot allow people to kind of helicopter in and do what they want with it. So I think asking our electeds to be very vigilant and not be very like on the sideline about what goes in there, but those same electeds to listen to the community and hear what that means. I think stuff like this, what you and Octavio are doing right now and raising awareness that this is happening, and it isn't just about a space on 181st Street for Washington. It really is about a precedent that this will create as to people helicoptering in and taking a community good, a community service, a community hub away from us. You know, they feel like they own the building. And I've always said, it's been our sweat equity. Who said you own it? It's been our sweat equity. We're the ones who have been looking out for the building, looking out for the people that come in there, looking out for the neighborhood that stretches out right immediately out there. No, it's not. Just because you put $1 down, it doesn't make it yours. The love, sweat, and faith and investment that you have in that space makes it just as part and just a part of the community as anyone that says I wrote a check for it.
Yeah, no, you guys kept it open, but you know what's funny too is a lot of times when people helicopter in, they end up just messing it all up, right? So a great example is right down the block on Broadway where the Coliseum was at, right? The RKO was there forever, my whole life, right? And now it's gone, and there's a pile of weed, and people go do heroin there.
Yes.
Right. Or the other church that was on 184th and Wadsworth, right? That they did some tomfoolery happen. Now there's nothing there, and it's just rats coming out of that thing every day. So it really is infuriating, and I don't think enough people know, what's happening. So I'm glad that you're doing the work, and they've messed around with the wrong people. You're really right about that one, Johanna.
So they kept, I kept telling them, listen, guys, when I come into this space, I am not political. I'm not government. I am just here in my spiritual space. And I just felt like they kept treating me individually as someone who is going to make trouble. And I said, I'm not trying to make trouble. I'm trying to work with you. But I feel that their fears, they just, made it come true. And I'm like, I'm not going to make trouble for the sake of making trouble. I'm going to do what I have to do to defend and advocate for the community. And you're so right, Led. Like those examples that you cited, it's a pattern. It's a pattern that we have to disrupt because right now with the Coliseum, and then you do that after November. So I talked about how November the synagogue won't be there. And that's going to be a real turning point because then they'll be like, okay, we are either going to sell, rent, whatever it is with that space. And that is why we have to really focus in the interim, these months leading up to November, because it is a pivotal time to make sure we don't get there, because then they will really feel like they can do what they want. And then we will have a situation where you have the Coliseum on one end and then this like vacant lot or just unattended space on the other end of 181st Street. And we can't send a message out there to the powers that be that that's okay with Washington Heights. It's not okay. You can't just come in and say, oh, it doesn't matter, because these people that are doing that, they're not the ones who have to live here, see it, walk by it, or feel the loss of what that used to be.
Yeah.
Good, Octavio. It's true that places that used to have such a place in our community that were hubs for the people of this community, like Coliseum, like the synagogue on 179th Street, and now Collegiate, it would be terrible if it became another empty lot with weeds coming out of it and nothing there. Now, I do want to say though, from your point as a member of the spiritual community that was part of the Fort Washington Collegiate Church, I mean, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. It sounds like you guys are dealing with racism. It sounds like you guys are dealing with straight up racism. And so why would you even want to, stay? And it sounds like things are on the verge of possibly, you guys maybe becoming your own independent spiritual hub that's not affiliated with the Fort Washington Collegiate Church and doesn't have to deal with that aspect of it. At some point, maybe it's good. Maybe this will be like a watershed moment for your congregation to say, guess what? We can do this on our own and we don't need you. So it's a two-sided coin though, because at the same time as you do that, you don't want that space to be left to rot, a space that you love, a space that you've invested your sweat equity.
Right. And not even rot, because also just not becoming this thing that doesn't belong there. Right. And again, it's like, Johanna, they don't own it really. Right. You just have paper. Right. But the people that kept it going, kept it beautiful, kept it important was the congregations. So is there a chance of your congregation getting back in there or no? What are our options right now?
There's a chance, and those are conversations that the Save Fort Washington Coalition is going to have next week. There's a chance in terms of conversations, but when we talk about whether or not there's a chance, the chance only exists if we believe that they truly are not there to build and generate as much money as they can out of that space. Because honestly, unless they cash in on the air rights, they're not going to get the top dollar that they can for that space. And if that is really how much they have departed from what they say is their mission, then we have no chance. But if we go into that meeting believing that they truly want to be good neighbors, good spiritual partners and stewards of that space, then there's a chance. And Octavio, you're right. It is a complicated place where we are now, where we're like, why would we want to continue being part of a system that has really dealt with us in a racist, classist, demeaning manner, that has, what is the word, gaslit us for so long? Because we worked so hard. We worked so hard to try to get options, chances, come up with different ideas, and then realize that none of it would have made a difference unless, it was something that they already had planned for. So we are going to rebrand ourselves. But honestly, individually speaking, I feel free. I feel liberated. Collegiate as a system talks about reparations. I don't know how what they've done is in keeping with reparations, but that is a history that we're not encumbered with, right? We're not carrying that history. Our history really is a history of love for our neighborhood and for our neighbor. And I think that when you look at Washington Heights, and I've said this for such a long time, what we need most in Washington Heights is a hub for our young people. Like, you don't have it. I mean, we definitely need senior housing and those other things. But if you're not going to build out that space, really looking at what we can do for our young people, I'm biased. I'm always about the youth and uplifting them. I think we've made a transformational difference in our neighborhood.
I still think that we need to get your Uptown Collective out of the internet and onto the ground. We need to find you a home somewhere where you can have Uptown Collective, and we can build on what you've built in all these years on the internet in real life, and do Uptown Collective Community Center. That's me.
No,
that's not coming, Led. That's just me.
I have an art background, so I would love for that to have like a multimedia aspect to it. In fact, we have, I think it's called Uptown Games, but we have a group, and they're part of the coalition now, where every week they went and they did game tournaments. Like gamers will come and they have an organization.
Wow.
Yeah, and they met and did tournaments out of our space. I saw them like, this is so, I was gonna curse, but this is so freaking beautiful. Because I just feel like, like what Uptown is about. And I want that space to be truly reflective of what we are about, and not what someone else who's not part of our neighborhood thinks we need or thinks we are.
And
Yeah.
I do think that this neighborhood, let me just say this, I do think that this neighborhood is losing its third spaces. right?
Mhm.
The churches, this church is just one example, but we just lost that really cool eatery on Broadway where there was a bunch of
Yeah.
different little
North End.
little
Yeah.
North End.
That was a fun little place where you could go. Thankfully,
Yes.
we've gotten some libraries that have come in, like the Inwood Library has reopened, and the Fort Washington Library on 179th Street has reopened. So those are good third spaces. But you can't really, make noise there. You can't take a phone call there. It's a different kind of third space. So we definitely need more of these third spaces. Johanna, I have ideas for you. Maybe we can talk offline about these ideas because I do see opportunities in the neighborhood as well. Like I do think that if the funding could be found, there would be like some excellent real opportunities. Like one of the things that just to spitball here, since we're talking about it, I would love to see the downtown television
MNN?
DCTV. No, it's not MNN, it's DCTV. Anyway, it's a downtown television studio that's for the community.
Mhm.
And I would love to do something up here as well, like that. Take their business plan and put it up here. I think it would work.
But Tyrone, sorry to interrupt you because I think it also piggybacks from a question that Led asked earlier.
Please interrupt me.
What do we do? And I think that also what's very emblematic about Washington Heights is that we come up with out of the box solutions. So even having that space as a hub for all these different things, so that we can come up with, okay, this is what we need to sustain ourselves and be okay. And then we're like organizations. I think sometimes organizations up here operate on a scarcity model, like I'm getting money from here, I'm getting this grant, I'm not telling you because, then I have less for me. And I think having a model in that building where every organization that's in there is for the community, is enriching the community, making it better, but also supporting each other, like really rooting for each other so that we can thrive as a community is a good plan to work towards. And to Led's more specific question about, well, what do we do? What's next? I think is worth exploring, almost coming with a gold standard. Like instead of going and saying, hey, so how can we make this work? Is saying, hey, this is how we're going to make it work. This is what's going to work. This is our gold standard for this community because we deserve nothing less.
And what really rankles to me about this, that is not a greedy developer, right? It's a church.
My God,
So,
yeah.
right? So that's what's crazy about it. And then it is really, talking about third space, it's a really beautiful corner lot. Right, it's this big, beautiful lawn. I seen Up Theater did a few plays there. Right, it really is a community space, and I think it needs to be more of a community space. And I think that the people that had it probably didn't really understand what they have. But I think that there's some shame that could be applied. Right, I think if it's a church, they should have some shame, some Christian shame. I think, right. So yeah. I mean, let's get activated. I think we could apply some pressure. I think we should.
Led, I think now it's time to take a short pause so that we can pay some of the bills, right?
You want to tell them a little about donations and how they could help the show?
Absolutely. We can't do this without contributions from our viewers. You're going to see a QR code which you can scan, and that's going to take you to a contribution site where you can make a contribution towards Uptown Voices. It's going to be helpful for us to be able to elevate our production. We have dreams and aspirations of doing live shows. We have dreams and aspirations of being on location at our various cultural institutions, and we can't do that without contributions from viewers and listeners like you. And we also can't do that without our sponsors. And this pilot season, this first episode of our pilot season, we are lucky to have a great sponsor, 181 Cabrini. It's our neighborhood bistro. Both Led and I are just steps away from 181 Cabrini, and we love it. 181 Cabrini is located right there on that corner of 181 and Cabrini, just steps
181 and Cabrini.
Just steps away from the bridge. So yeah, I love it. Led, you and I were there the other night.
Yeah, and we also met there for the first time. You and I, the first time we met, we had like lunch there, and it's my local bar now. Like since you and I both live like right around. It's my local bar. I spend a lot of times there. James Lee, the owner, is just an incredible restaurateur. Right, I think he's a great guy. He's super funny, but like the food is on point. Please hit up 181 Cabrini. It is really one of my favorite spots. You have to try the coconut bread pudding. They got coconut, they got chocolate, and now they got banana, but the coconut, outstanding. It's a great neighborhood joint. Thank you to James and One Cabrini for sponsoring this episode. And, you know, if you want to sponsor, holla at my boy. You know what I mean? Let's make it happen. You know what I mean?
I just want to say one thing. We're going to have a code, a redemption code at the end of this episode, which you can bring to 181 Cabrini for a special treat.
But yeah, without further ado, though, let's get to it. Let's do it.
You mentioned in the beginning about what does it mean to be Christian, and what would Jesus say? Right? Like, I'm not a Christian, but I definitely have spoken to a lot of Christians who are, you know, just kind of ashamed of the direction that the Christian church is going towards in terms of the hatred towards immigrants and the proselytizing for wealth and those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, you have an opportunity, right, to actually step away from maybe, I don't know if that's what Collegiate was doing. I don't know if that's what Collegiate stood for. What I don't know what they stood for, but at least you can define yourselves better. What does the Fort Washington Community Church stand for? What are your pillars?
So certainly community, and again, the church is more than me, so I just want to be careful not to speak for everyone. But one of the things that we plan to do as a new model is that once a week, which means we will take one of the Sundays each month to actually live out loud our scripture, not just come in the pews every Sunday and listen to it, like, which just happens a lot, and you're not really living it. You're not really reaching out to your neighbor. You're not really like expressing that unconditional love in the community. So we will pick a Sunday every month, and it will be a community good, a community service, and actually think about that scripture and live it out loud, whatever that looks like. Whether it is, you know, people, of course, immediately would think about doing some kind of outreach with individuals who are displaced, advocating for something better for our neighborhood, addressing food insecurity, visiting the residents at Isabella to make sure that they don't feel lonely, addressing mental health crisis, anything that we say when we're in the pews, amen to, that we pick a Sunday and then we live that scripture out loud.
Not just a spiritual service, but actual community service.
Without action.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And now it's beautiful, but I also think that's what's going to be needed now with the onslaught coming from Trump, you know, from the tyrant. I think the Mamdani win, right? I think it's something that was needed. We needed that boost in the in the arm, and I think, you know, especially it's that, and also I think heroin is encroaching in our neighborhood. I'm not going to get into the politics right now of harm reduction. You know, that's for another episode. But we have created a heroin corridor, you know, that 180th and 181st is right next to it. And I think one of the big fears for me is that church is just going to become just a blight. Like, I think that's a real possibility. Like, I don't think people understand that we're living in different times, that it's a double punch, right? It's a federal punch from Trump, and then the festering heroin thing that's been happening here in this little area for the last few years, since like about 2018. It's a double punch. Can you talk a little bit about your fears of what could happen there, Johanna?
If that space is closed down, and I think that this happens every time there's a blight in the neighborhood, there usually is, statistically, we've seen an increase in crime. People don't feel as safe, and you just start seeing a spiraling in terms of quality of life in the neighborhood. This is an incredible family neighborhood, and I think that it's more the reason why we have to address it. And you're right, there are corridors that lend itself more for a certain kind of behavior, and those are things that we should address. But having that space empty, as you said, it's already kind of happening in the Coliseum, where the Coliseum theater used to be, and we just can't let it exacerbate. We have to definitely take a stand and be ready to do whatever it takes, because I don't want us as residents, as members of this community, to be here next year and wish we had done more. I don't want that to happen to us. I know that we're tired for all the reasons that you spelled out. Like we feel battered because of what's going on with our migrant neighbors. We see these horrible federal cuts that are going to really just destroy our hospitals and the care that we get in the hospitals. Even if you have private insurance, things are going to be pulled in terms of funding, and it's going to have an impact. We are going to be really like punched in the gut when it comes to mental health services, and we are still dealing with an epidemic of substance abuse. So I don't want us to sleep at the wheel, even though we are being battered. And I say that with a lot of compassion because as a community that has always been disproportionately impacted by everything bad that the world wants to send our way, we are always disproportionately impacted. I know we get tired. We have a right to be tired, but that's why we have to be strong in numbers so we can pass the baton, we can rest, and then pass the baton to our friend, to our neighbor, and just keep it up so that they don't take advantage of us being tired. So they don't wait to tire us out. And that's why I say these months, July, August, September, October, are critical for us to make sure we take a stand, because if we are successful with this, to making sure that space in whatever shape or form is given to the community, if we are successful, then that is us sending a message to every helicoptering, no good meaning entity that they are going to have a big fight on their hands if they try to do that to Washington.
So, firstly, I want to know, you said that there's going to be a letter delivered by some electeds. Who are the electeds on this letter, and what are they saying?
So far, the electeds, I think the letter was sent today, is Borough President Mark Levine, Council Member Carmen De La Rosa, Assembly Member Manny De Los Santos, and Senator Robert Jackson have sent the letter asking Collegiate to reconsider their decision to close their church, but also acknowledging that the congregation is in transition, rebranding themselves to something different, and to please keep on the table the option of that new congregation continuing to serve out of that space because of the historical ties and investment that congregation has already made to that space, and to also not to move forward with any plans without significant concrete community input and from all stakeholders, and to make sure that space is not privatized to a point where there is no community good or service for the community. So those are the asks. And of course, it does conclude with asking for a meeting, because these conversations are better to having an actual meeting, but that's the ask. And it complements well what the Save for Washington Coalition is asking for, like saying, hey, let's regroup and let's talk about what this space can be and explore all possibilities of not displacing the neighbors that you already had in that space. For it continue having an interface space, continue having space for all these groups that need a space to do their thing, continue to be a space for the arts, like the choir, the orchestra, the theater, and continue having a space for a youth program.
If there's been a lot written lately about churches converting to residential, I think Cranes has had a lot of reporting on this being a trend around New York, that a lot of churches are converting into residential. I guess, because of what you've said and that they own their air rights and all that stuff, it sounds, the location, which is a prime location, it does sound like the very likely outcome would be for a high-rise, probably high-end residential kind of place to be built there. Now, if the community had input, right, and said, well, we want, fine, you want to build a high-rise residential, that's fine, but you must include those things that you just ran down. I mean, it sounds to me very similar to what they did in Inwood with where the People's Theater is going to be, and a bunch of, and they built a massive building, but they did include some of the community needs or requests from the community for having a theater there or things like that. So if something along those lines were to be proposed and accepted, is that the kind of direction that you'd like to take this in? Because unfortunately, no matter how much sweat equity people do put into it, the fact of the matter is that this group owns the land, owns the air rights, and essentially can do what they want. If this group were to take into consideration what you're asking and build that into whatever future structure is there, was that something that would sort of align with where you guys want to go?
I would ask for more than that, Octavio. With all due respect, with the project, with the People's Theater Project, and People Theater Project is a great organization, I would look to the Sugar Hill Museum model as a better model for us, because that is deeply affordable, fully affordable. It would provide units for our people, and we wouldn't be supporting a building or a development that will further accelerate gentrification in our neighborhood. It wouldn't really be responsive to our needs. So we will push for deeply affordable and yes, community space. And what happens too often is that in a lot of the development projects, if they say, okay, we're going to do 80-20, 80%, market, 20% affordable, and then we'll give you community space. And then that community space is very boxed in and very particular, but we want to push the envelope because we can, and those projects exist out there. So if they wanted to build, we would say, great, build deeply affordable and have several different spaces for community. Don't give us just one room, one hall, part-time. No, we want several spaces so that we can really maximize that community space for our neighborhood. That's what we would push for if we went that route.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like something that the community could really get behind, because if we really want to provide affordable housing for people in the city of New York, we need to build affordable housing that's truly affordable for the people that live in the city of New York, and not affordable to people who are making, hundreds of thousands of dollars, which, I mean, it still maybe not as easy to live in the city, but for sure, I think that the Sugar Hill sounds like a good option. Have you? And look, I mean, ideally, we do nothing. There'd be no change, right? Ideally,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
but
no, because I don't think, to be honest,
don't see that, though.
I don't even, because again, I love Sugar Hill, the building, because you had a star architect design it. The Nigerian, I forgot his name, the Nigerian architect that designed it. But that's too big for that corner, right? Like, so you know what I mean? Like, I think you're also saying, I would think that you're also content with it staying as is, right? And
Yes.
just
Yes.
being a home for the community, right?
Yes.
Because I don't think it needs a big old building on that corner. I mean, I just don't.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's right.
I think that
Okay.
there's something to be said about keeping the character of our neighborhood the way it is. And yeah, like our first ask would be to keep it as is, to honor the organizations that did displaced, and to be open-minded about bringing other organizations and having more ideas of how to make it sustainable.
I wish that we had a way of discouraging developers from leaving their land untouched and blighted. Because unfortunately, what does seem to be happening is that we get neither. We don't get to keep the beautiful building, and we don't even get like the big building that we may not be 100% happy with. What we do get is an empty lot that's strewn with garbage, that has rats running through it. And we can all agree that that is just not what, even that we will fight tooth and nail against that. But it doesn't seem to me that we have much of a say. So, what do we need to do in this community to rally the people to make sure that at the very least, we're not going to get a Coliseum situation on that corner, because that would destroy this neighborhood.
I agree. I think that the difference between the Coliseum and this corner is that with this corner, we see it coming, right? I feel like with the Coliseum, we're like, whoa, what happened? And you can't go to whoever owns the Coliseum and hold them accountable. That it's really difficult.
Right.
Everyone's like, what's going on with that space? And really, the last thing I heard is that the owner is holding out for like the highest bidder. I've heard Trader Joe's, mall, like I don't know, all these different things, but really the owner's sitting on it. The difference here is that we know the people who are making the decision. We can more directly hold them accountable, and it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. We have an opportunity to really be creative and really be diligent and intentional about what goes into that space. And do you remember the supermarket on 187th Street? For what it was gonna close. I don't know, like we remember, like.
Yeah.
Aussies.
That was
And then the
that was
community came, and it's almost like the developer or the owner said, I don't want this headache, you know? And I almost want to make it difficult for collegiate to negotiate in bad faith, because we're gonna make it difficult for you. We're gonna make it where anyone who's gonna come here and it's not good for us, they're gonna regret it. They're gonna be like, I'm leaving, I'm not doing this. And then it will be another loss for collegiate.
who was
So Joanna,
behind that move with
I'm
Ozzy's.
sorry.
What was the group there? Was it just neighbors, or was there an advocacy group that was around there? I mean,
It was
because
the neighbors.
I would love to
It
I
was
would love to talk to them about, collaborating on something to make sure that we could take their playbook, because frankly, like when we say holding them accountable, right? To me, I don't know what that means, honestly. I don't know what does it mean when we say hold them accountable. Do you have a sort of like a vision of what that would look like when you hold somebody accountable for that move? Because like you said, at least these in this instance, we know who's behind it.
I think I think Led alluded to it a little bit earlier. Calling them out. They are they are an organization that professes to be about one thing, and the way that they have moved um, in this space has been completely the opposite of what they say they stand for, which is ministry, good service, community. And I think calling them out as an organization, uh, bad PR for them, is a powerful tool. I don't want to underestimate how powerful the tool of really bad press for them is, where they have to kind of defend themselves. And when we think about negotiations and attracting developers or any project partners, or anyone who's going to invest in that project is going to say, am I going to be able to finish this project and make a profit? Or is there going to be so many hiccups here that it's going to be a loss for me? That's like the minutia aspect of negotiating and acquiring a partner, or even entering into the initial stages of negotiations. So I think there are different ways to hold them accountable. These meetings with the electeds, with the state coalition. I mean, why not even like have them come to a town hall and have them really provide answers to the community, so that they see that they have to be held accountable to the community. Usually this happens sometimes through when there's like a land use process through the community board, but that's a playbook that's there, right? But why not again think out of the box? Why not just do our own town hall, because we can and because we don't want to wait until it's too late.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea. I think that
I
makes
think that's
tons
a
of
great
sense.
idea.
And I think you have a good set of elected officials on board, and I think we need to get more. So what can we like? How do we stay in touch? How do people keep up with what's happening with what you're doing and your group is doing, Joanna?
So we have a IG page. It's at Save FWCC, and we do provide periodic updates there. And I can give my email. People can email me to ask me for updates. It's Johanna, JOHANNA .New York
Gotcha.
spelled out at gmail.com. I don't mind being kind of the conduit until we have something more official. I really do think that this is more than how we walk spiritually, or what our faith is. This is the 100% community.
And Sunday, right? When is your next? When is your first?
So our first gathering launch. So this Sunday we are gathering at Bennett Park. We took a break this last Sunday because we felt that we needed the emotional reset. It was the first Sunday that we were this like July 4th weekend. It was the first Sunday that we weren't at the collegiate campus. But we are meeting this Sunday at Bennett Park at 11 a.m. We're gathering to talk about what's next, to do short scripture, and to also talk about the new model where we're gonna like live out our scripture in real time in our neighborhood. And then our first official service is going to be on July 20th. We will have music like we had at Collegiate. We will have access to green space like we had at Collegiate. But more than anything, we're gonna have each other. We're gonna have the same and I have a feeling that we're gonna be better.
Yeah,
That's amazing. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Sounds like you have a great opportunity here. Sounds like you have a great opportunity. We're bumping up on that hour. Bumping up on that
been a
hour.
good
I really
combo.
think it's been a good conversation.
It's
I'm
been a
really,
great
really
conversation.
happy.
Yeah, I agree.
Really happy
And
we
I
can
also-
make this happen.
And I do think like what Octavio's saying that like that if we don't exert our power here in this particular instance, there's a lot to lose, you know, again, and you know, and you just see it, right? Like again, I've lived here for my whole life, like you, Johanna, and you see the changes that are happening, right? And I do think there's a new era we're entering, right? Where I don't think, and again, this is just kind of, I don't think that the kind of gentrification that was happening here or the kind of big money moves coming, they're not going to make sense in the coming years,
No, they're not.
right? They're not, right? We're entering something else. And I think this whole, you know, $1 million apartment in the hood is not going to make sense 2 years from now. You know what I mean? So I do think that if we lose that, we lose a lot. And you know, I grew up here. I grew up on Wadsworth. You know what I mean? I grew up on Wadsworth, and from my window, I could see Fort Washington. I could see Fort Tryon Park. And Fort Washington used to be this thing like, Fort Washington, you made it, right? Like, and now I live on Fort Washington. And you see that Fort Washington that is no longer there, and it keeps getting worse.
Mhm.
And I think that if you lose that corner, I don't know what will be there, what will be here, how this will look in 2 years, right? Like you were talking about the crime. I got a car in this neighborhood. I've got my car stolen, you know, and then returned, and I've got so many things. So I really do think it's important, and I want to help in any way I can. Like tagged Uptown Collective, we'll help get that word out. It's important, and again, it's a church, so there should be some shame there.
Yeah,
you know what I
there
mean?
should be
There's some
some
shame.
For me, that's what es el colmo. You know what I mean? I get it. I get gentrification. I can almost understand like
Right.
the owner of the movie theater decides to tear it down and wants to put something else. That's a movie theater, and yeah, it was historic and it was part of the community. You gotta get. But ultimately, it was a movie theater, and he can do what he wants with it. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's terrible that I hate it that it's empty like that. But it's el colmo. This is a freaking church. You know what I mean? And you're gonna do this to a church that's not just a church like. This is just like a church that's like at the center of our community. So it's like when we talk about gentrification, this is like the limit I think that we can say as a community. You can't touch this and then just do whatever you want and take us out of our spiritual space because you want to. You know,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
more to it.
Yeah, God damn it, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So-
damn it,
yeah,
damn it.
yeah. Fuck that. No, but seriously.
I'm
so
not
now
even
I'm thinking,
Christian, damn it.
no, who should they be calling? Should they be calling the collegiate church? What should we be
Yeah.
doing besides the
They
election
can't-
officials?
Or
They
should
can
they be
go-
calling the council people? Or who
Yeah,
should they be calling?
so definitely call the electeds, but you can contact and I don't know the number offhand. It's on the collegiate church has its website. And calling them, and contacting them and hearing like they should have a barrage of calls.
I got one. I got a number for you: 212-233-1960.
You go.
So please call that number. That's the main one. That's the Collegiate Church of New York, right? That's the one we should be calling. All right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And also, I think, Johanna, this is such an important topic. We need to have you on regularly, if you don't mind. I mean, like, I think we need to
I don't
updates. You know, every few weeks. Let's talk about this as we head into November, because I think we need to keep this on the front burner. Yeah, let's keep doing it, Johanna. This is an important
I
conversation.
would love that.
I-
That helps
Yeah.
me accountable for action led. So yes.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're you're involved, right? Because you know my daughter went to school with your daughter, right? Like I know that this is not that you really have the best interests of this community at heart. So let's keep rocking out, Johanna. Let's do this. I think we can apply some pressure, and we should. Thank you for being on the show. Yeah. Any last words, Johanna? Take us out here.
So I just want to say that having Uptown Collective part of this is just like, como tú dijiste, Octavio, this is a neighborhood fight, and I just want to be able to give them something they didn't see coming. They were warned, they didn't see coming, and I just think it's more powerful, the course, for us to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Uptown Voices, brought to you by 181 Cabrini, your neighborhood bistro just steps away from the North Walk of the George Washington Bridge. Use the code Uptown Voices Season 1 for your discount. And to stay up to date on the latest in Uptown, you can follow Uptown Collective on Instagram, Facebook, and X. If you're watching Uptown Voices on YouTube, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and to give us a like. We also need financial contributions from listeners like you to produce, improve, and expand our content. To contribute, please scan the QR code on the screen or visit www.livinamericana.com. That's www.livinAmericana.com. Until next time, this has been Uptown Voices.